Hello, my name is Louie Menorca, Associate Editor at the Student Voice, and today we'll be looking at Ace Combat 7, Skies Unknown. Ace Combat 7, in an age of battle royales and first-person shooters, is an arcade flight action video game that takes place in a mirrored Earth called Strange Real. Unlike the focus of video games today of on-the-ground fighting as a soldier, you take to the skies as a fighter pilot, raining death and destruction, changing the tide of battles, a so-called Angel of Death. Why Ace Combat 7? It's not a battle royale. Just kidding. Being a longtime fan of the series since Ace Combat 5 on the PlayStation 2 back in 2007, the feeling of taking to the skies and being near untouchable from harm by way of high G turns and evasive tactics always appealed to my inner Top Gun fighter pilot. It's that sense of badassery that comes with taking off to the sound of Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins, and the satisfaction of taking down a tough opponent that really comes to mind when I play Ace Combat. Now, as a game that is synonymous with console platforms like PlayStation and Xbox, I made the bold decision to play this iteration on my PC. Firstly, I feel that my PC would be able to run the game smoothly and bring a clear, visual graphics experience to the eyes. Secondly, it's the mainstay of which I play the majority of video games of, so it's convenient. Now, my other option would have been to play on the PS4. I would have had access to the game a week and a half in advance, and there would have been specifically limited to PS4 VR missions. However, as I've decided to keep it on PC, I've retained the ability to keep it in line with most of the games I play and run it on better graphics and performance. Furthermore, contrary to control interfaces, I just took the PS4 controller and hooked it up to my computer for the same experience I would have had on the PS4. Now, with an array of planes and weapons to choose from, Ace Combat provides vast, numerous scenarios and different environments to test and play to your heart's content. It helps that you don't have to worry about small things like fuel or limited ammunition. When I first started the game for the first time, taking off the runway in the first mission gave me a sense of building excitement, which immediately followed my first kill, an enemy bomber, via a short-range air-launched missile that came from one of my weapon's hardpoints on my plane. The following primary and secondary explosions from the missile colliding with plane and the extra detail of the engines and munitions subsequently detonating in the bomber added to the Michael Bay-esque effect of explosions as I flew by. Looking around in between moments of action, there are lots of things to note and behold. The detail of the ocean far below my altitude shined and sparkled like the real thing. The mission and motion missions afterwards had a lot of clouds to fly through and gave the effect of the real thing. Moisture from a cloud spread all across my screen, either in third or first-person cockpit view, giving the effect of condensation and vision impairment. Additionally, with the air current mechanic in the game, flying through clouds or second parts of the sky gives you aircraft turbulence, visually shaking your jet around the screen and forcing you to adjust your controls to correct for the interference. In the first couple of missions, the pace of intensity is gradual, from a few to groups of airborne enemies to deal with, and getting the hang of controls, there's plenty of time to admire the backgrounds and the explosions and the environmental dangers. However, at a certain turning point, Ace Combat 7 throws everything at you. You're subjected to flying in conditions like low visibility, close to the ground, around plentiful mountains and peaks and narrow valleys with increasing closeness. The number of enemies increase, and therefore the amount of missiles and fire coming your way. In settings like that, you're forced to adapt. Fly faster, turn harder, and apply a significant amount of leaning forward to increase concentration. Time after time, getting shot down by an enemy or just flying into ground after a heated exchange of fire, you get progressively better at being a pilot. You start to notice things you've never done before in games, like glance over at your altitude or speed, which, a bigger part of the noticing, is the realization that you're fighting 360 degrees in the air. You've got a minimap to use, but in most games you're expected to read that out on a 2 to 3 dimensional plane of flat ground, not aerially. I have to use the other joystick to just free look, spotting dangers and enemies around me with a heads-up display, whether they may be up or down, and as compared to shooting, you've got to maneuver your plane via pitching and yawing to get into the optimal position to take down your foes. Getting into the late and endgame missions, you find yourself immersed in the action. It's the effect of a captivating movie, and time passes you by and you don't notice. You feel like you're there, behind the stick, invested in the story and the motions. Hard enemies from the start aren't so hard anymore, and everything drops before your eyes to the booms and thuds of explosions. However, with each mission, Ace Combat 7 keeps throwing something new into the mix. You learn something new, a new enemy comes in, but you're passively adapting to it without a second's reaction, and the next thing you know, you're done with the mission. Enemies are shot down or driven away. At the end of it, my first playthrough into the campaign, I was more than satisfied. The Ace Combat series as a whole really stuck to me since playing Ace Combat 5 back in my childhood, and Ace Combat 7 continued to bring on the nostalgia and excitement that I had experienced as a child. So, while Ace Combat sports a fantastic campaign backed by an arcadey flight style, lots of explosions, and a rockin' soundtrack on top of all the beautiful visuals and story, there's quite a few things in the background to help you be creative in your playstyle and be selective on how you want to do things. First of all, there's an aircraft tree. Yes, there are multiple planes to choose from, and multiple weapons associated with each one to help rain multiple forms of destruction upon your foes. You're limited at start to a couple of planes, but with each mission completed or multiplayer match finished, you earn MRP, which is basically currency used to unlock these things. Each plane is classified under 3 types of roles: attacker, multi-role, and fighter. Attackers are the best at taking on ground targets. Fighters are the best at taking on air targets, and the multi-role is the best of both worlds. However, I feel that in this game, at this current state, that the fighter is what you'll mostly use until further features or scenarios are added. Depending on the mission or flight, each aircraft is suited to a different playstyle, not only by their stats, but by the parts you choose to put on them, either enhancing the performance of your aircraft, weapons effectiveness, or passive defensive abilities. All of these things will help you improve your performance out there in the skies. However, for those who care more about looks compared to actual functionality, Call of Duty, there is a minimal number of skins and accolades to apply to your plane that have a larger part in flaunting style in multiplayer rather than single player. Now, fighting in single player and multiplayer aside, you're not just blazing through the air to the sound of explosions to well-crafted soundtracks, courtesy of Kiki Kobayashi, the composer. You're a pivotal main character, of which events in the world revolve around you. From the radio chatter of allies mid-mission, to the pre- and post-mission briefings, and to the detailed cutscenes that take place before each mission. We're talking about your role in a continental conflict taking place between 2 superpowers in a world that has seen years, even decades of war, and ironically, one that mirrors us almost too well. Ace Combat does well to have a well-set, shadowy entity tying strings like the fabled Illuminati of our time, in this case a people of Belka known for pitting one nation against another and creating hyper-advanced technology. Today, we use drones to either create some scenic, beautiful aerial footage, or photography in a consumer sense, or fly at high altitude, spying on our enemies or guiding munitions to their targets. In Ace Combat, the drones are the fighter jets themselves. Without any human limitations, they have more numbers, they fly insane maneuvers, and are the main evil technology in this game. Spoiler alert, drones and AI are the one unifying factor in this game. Otherwise, aside from evil maneuvering in the background, the 2 nations fighting, Oceania and Eurasia, are basically the USA and Russia paralleled. Talk as if the Cold War actually became a hot one this year. It adds a deeper understanding for the story and how it affects the characters, as well as provokes some analytical thoughts on the player to think of our own world today. On the other hand, most will probably overlook this and look to the Michael Bay-esque action and explosions. In conclusion, since this is the second time that the Student Voice has done a video game review / video game article in general, I feel that the whole rating system might be useful here. I'm giving this game a solid 7 out of 10. Now, a lot of the score comes from my personal nostalgia and high expectations for the game, both of which were well past what I had expected. But there are several other values to consider. The longevity and variety of the missions for my first playthrough genuinely had me on this game for a solid 8 to 10 hours, making a net gain in regards to playability and price value. In addition to those hours, the beautifully rendered visuals and graphics on PC is a major plus for the game. Overall gameplay styles and appropriate variety of mechanics and supporting functions is another plus. And another detail to consider to this is the subtlety of the developers to include small tidbits and references to the previous games, so seamlessly integrated that veterans of this series can relate and appreciate to. However, there can be said to be negatives as well. The limit of modes in multiplayer, the devolving to turn fights, and the major skill gap between players seems to be an issue. I, for one, despite prior experience, still find myself playing in multiplayer lobbies, where it nearly immediately devolves into launching missiles into targets that are turning too steeply for the projectiles to connect, and near nothing else happens. There's a suggestion to this problem, and it is to consider the dogfighting mechanic from Ace Combat Assault Horizon, which, in contrast to the many cries of the traditional veteran players of the series, would bring some variety to the fights. Another negative, albeit small part to note, is that there could be some quality of life issues to address. Perhaps better matchmaking for multiplayer, in addition to server-side servers for regions. Perhaps we could benefit from a duo to 4-man squadron-sized co-op gameplay mode, and perhaps add a tutorial for the new players. Just the small things. The verdict stands as it is early in February 2019, but I look forward to the upcoming patches and downloadable content coming out this summer, adding new maps, planes, and modes. In conclusion, I feel that Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown is a quality, remarkable game to come out in the age of Battle Royales, bringing gamers back to a series where you can take to the skies and feel empowered with a sense of challenge to taking on your foes, back to the days of Xbox 360s and PS2s and PS3s, to breathe new life into diversifying game genres, and to appreciate the game for its quality and time put into it, than for just multiplayer and repetitive mechanics and new sequels coming out every year, such as that from, Call of Duty or Battlefield, etc., etc. For myself, having a history of the game is what got me to buy it, but it's the entire experience that kept me playing the game to the end, and I hope that future additions to the game will have me coming back and revisiting it in a future and current 2019 where the outlook of games coming out are so positive that is keeping me moving from game to game. Anywho, that's the basis of the story and my feelings on the gameplay thus far, spoiler free. My name is Louie Menorca, Associate Editor with the Student Voice. Thank you for tuning in.